Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Good afternoon from Bandung. Also good afternoon to Japan. Konnichiwa. I hope you are doing well in the midst of this change during this pandemic. Welcome to the Visiting Lecturer Day 2 with the topic Well-being at Work. Here we have a sharing session with lecturer from another country to widen our knowledge. Greetings to us all and to the Honorable Vice Dean of Academic, Student and Research Affairs of the Faculty of Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran, Bapak Frederick Dermawan Purba MC PhD Psikolog, Head of Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran, Bapak Dr. Yus Nugraha MA Psikolog, our honored speaker, Professor Akira Suda, our moderator, and all of our beloved participants. My name is Aida, and it's my pleasure to be your master of ceremony. First, I would like to welcome each one of you and express our gratitude for taking the time to join us today on Zoom, and this webinar also live streaming from K Monezan YouTube channel. This event is brought to you by Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran. The first day of this event has been held on Wednesday with the topic Well-being in Hybrid Working by Professor Alfana Faidia. And now we will continue to explore about work and well-being toward post-pandemic growth, challenge from psychology and of harmonization and sustainable by Professor Akira Suda. We are sure that we will get benefit from this visiting lecturer, and hopefully it will be a fount of new insights to many more collaborations in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the next agenda, I would like to inform you again about our code of conduct for today's event. The code of conduct will be shown on the screen. First, attendees are requested to rename their Zoom account with the format shown on the chat box. Attendees are requested to mute themselves during presentation. Participants and presenters may use the virtual backgrounds provided on the chat box. The attendees form for participants will be sent in the chat box during presentation or Q&A session. So please make sure to check out the chat box. And during Q&A session, participants can type your question in the chat box or use the raise hand and ask verbally. Feel free to ask the panelists in Indonesian, and our moderator will be happily translate it to English. That's all the code of conduct for today. Now, to start us off this event, please be in a position of respect and be ready for our national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem. Thank you. To start us off, we would like to invite our Head of Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran, Bapak Dr. Yus Nugraha, MA Psikolo, to deliver his opening speech. Bapak Yus Nugraha, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Aida. Good afternoon, Professor Akira Juda. Good afternoon also for Mr. Frederick, Vice Dean, for faculty, also friends and colleagues, and also students from Good afternoon, Professor Akira. It's already evening.
I'm sorry, Bapak Yus. We cannot clearly hear your voice.
How about now? Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, Professor Akira. Thank you so much for coming to presentation. I have to tell
Your voice is breaking. Angus, your voice is breaking.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I try to resolve problem with my.
Maybe your headset.
Yes. How about now? Better?
Try talking.
Okay. Okay. So thank you. This is technical problem. Okay. This visiting lecture is one of the also our 60th commemoration of our faculty of psychology. So it's the second day of our department of psychology delivery in relation with well-being at work. So I'm so sorry, my voice is not good enough. But then the second one, I'm so sorry because the capacity of this room of Zoom is over capacity. So my friend, colleague also, the student. Then next, probably again is one of our steps to set up our collaboration between our two universities. And now Professor Akira is already pension from the Kuruma University, but now thank you for our faculty for
Sorry, Bapak Yus. I think there's a problem with your audio.
I guess so. My point is not good enough. How about now? It's okay.
Yes, yeah, continue, Bapak Yus.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you to our faculty, to our committee, MC team, I saw this Miss Kanai from here, from India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bapak Yus Nugraha. So it will be the first step to the next collaboration, right, Bapak Yus Nugraha? Okay. Okay, now we would like to invite our Vice Dean of Academic, Student and Research Affairs of the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Padjadjaran, Bapak Frederick Dermawan Purba, MC PhD Psikolog, or usually called Bang Jeki, to deliver his opening speech and to officially open this event. Please welcome Bapak Jeki. The platform is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Probably near evening there, Professor Akira. I don't know the exact time difference between Japan and Indonesia. Welcome. I think it's been a long time collaboration between the Faculty of Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran and the Honorable Professor Akira Suda. I know probably since I'm still a student in this faculty. Until now, I am the Vice Dean of the faculty. So, and thank you again and again and again on behalf of the Dean of the faculty and on behalf of the Faculty of Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran that you are willing to help us, to support us, and continue collaborating with us in every aspect of science and also teaching in the Faculty of Psychology. And now I think it is this is an important topic about work and well-being toward post-pandemic growth. I saw that the picture sent by Pak Yus, that will be the title of your presentation, and I like the optimism of Professor Akira that put the word post-pandemic. We hope that, we've been here almost 2 years, and in the end, I think we all can be agreed that we have to live with this virus and its variants, and we now have to go live with it, accustomed to the presence of the virus, but we have to be still growing as a person, growing as a community, growing as a country, and growing as a human population in this earth. So and it is very I'm very grateful also that you mentioned how psychology can play a very important role in this post-pandemic growth. So we are looking forward for the insightful and inspiring presentation from you. But before that, I would like to thank the Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology of the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Padjadjaran, all the organizing committee, all the participants, and I hope that we all can have a fruitful, insightful, and hopefully after this also can be useful for us to live in our next days together in the post-pandemic growth, hopefully. Again, thank you, Professor Akira, and we hope that our collaboration will be more and more in the future between you and the Faculty of Psychology Universitas Padjadjaran. By this, I announced this webinar to be starting and to open this webinar. I give the word back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bang Jeki, for the inspiring speech. Also, thank you to all the lecturers for coming. Thank you for taking your time and for joining us today. Now, before we start, I want to invite all participants to have taken a group photos. So please, everyone in here, who can open the cameras before we join to the main event, we can take a group photos. Okay. I will take the lead. Please give your best smile. I will start the countdown in 3, 2, 1. Okay. One more time. Maybe we can use reaction now. so we can have a more colorful photos. I will give the heart. Okay, nice. Okay, I will start the countdown in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, nice, beautiful photos. Now let's move on to the main event of the Visiting Lecturer Day 2. We are going to explore about well-being after post-pandemic growth. Let me introduce our moderator for today's session, Ms. Elsa Tamara Salsabila, SC. Her curriculum vitae will be shown on the screen. Yeah, Miss Elsa Tamara Salsabila, SPC, we usually call Miss Elsa, earned her latest degree in Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Padjadjaran in 2019 as the top 3 fastest student who graduates in 3.5 years. He has many internship experiences and been working as translator since 2015. She was also very active in some organization during her college years. Her latest publication in 2020 has been published by Turkish Journal of Computer and Mathematics Education. Noted also as corresponding author and speaker for some conferences, and the recent one as speaker for promoting well-being at workplace. So very similar with today's topic. And now she is in her last year of professional and master degree in industrial and organizational psychology, Universitas Padjadjaran. Without any further ado, please welcome Ms. Elsa to guide this session. Ms. Elsa, the platform is yours.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Aida. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As very well introduced, my name is Elsa, and it is an honor for me to be the moderator in today's agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know that we have been living in the COVID-19 outbreak for nearly 2 years now. So, and it really influences the way we work and of course our well-being. So today, ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to be hearing from a professor from Japan about work and well-being towards the post-pandemic growth, specifically in terms of the challenges from psychology of harmonization and sustainable development. Well, first of all, let me read the CV of today's presenter. Thank you. Professor Akira Tsuda is a full professor of Graduate School of Medical Sciences at Teikyo University of Science in Japan. He pursued his bachelor's and master's degree at Sophia University and his doctoral degree at Kurume University. His expertise lies upon stress research based on biopsychosocial approach, and then field experimental science on well-being, and health psychology in a cross-cultural perspective. Professor Akira is currently also an emeritus professor of Kurume University in Fukuoka, where he pursued his psychologist career for 40 years. His research examines the biopsychosocial factors that produce ill health outcomes among workers and college students. And his current research investigates how positive psychological resources, including well-being, positive affect, and resilience, influence the psychobiological processes which are relevant to health. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Akira is also an author of more than 200 peer-reviewed articles and books, also book chapters, and he is responsible for many editorial book series. He is also often invited in many international scientific conferences, both as keynote and symposium speaker, and or lecturer, and as chair and discussant. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, a gentle reminder here, if you have any questions for Professor Akira, you are very welcome to write down your questions on the chat box, or you can ask the questions directly by raising your hand. And the questions will be answered on the Q&A session after the presentation. Well, all right, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Akira Tsuda. The screen is yours.
Selamat siang. Kumakaman. Tamanga.
Memang.
Nama saya Akira. Okay, so can you see my slide?
Yes. Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you for introducing me, Aida, and also the Elsa taking a role of the introducing me and the moderators. Okay. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to members of committee of the AMPAT, especially Professor Yu Nunghana. He's a friend of mine for a long time. Today, I talk the work and well-being toward post-pandemic growth. The Frederick told me that still we are struggling with the coronavirus. Recently, the new coronavirus, but in Tokyo, it's now the very low rate of the infection after 5 waves. So we expected these situations. So please, patient my poor English, okay? So I think that we have begun to collaborating the study with the youth of Pajajaran. I visited late 2015 that the 7th International ASEAN Association Indigenous Cultural Psychology held in Bandung. So, and the chairperson was youth. So I was so enjoyed the Bandung. So that time I taught this lecture. Also that I visited Bali and Denpasar, also the same conference. And also I visited your university. So nice and so huge campus. Okay. So also from youth groups visited my universities before I moved to new universities, Kurume. Now it's enjoy I think the Jimmy and the other person, the very famous Emilius Professor, the Suriana, and also the Tatis, and also the so nice youth families, and the beautiful lady Julia, and so smart daughters, Priyanka. Okay. I also visited Chiptora University. I think that you know the Surabaya. This time, almost 8 years ago, so Professor Jenny Stuana invited me to her university. I gave the lecture to students of University of Chiptora on doing research about stress detector software. Also, this picture shows the article on Java Post newspaper in which explanations about work stress and symptoms among workers and entrepreneurs. Stress detector software is needed to measure and give recommendations based on stress levels. This picture shows my first presentation at the international conference, International Congress of Psychology, held at Leipzig in 1980 or longer years ago. As a young psychologist entitled to a work, I used to devote my research to understand how psychological factors, for example, with and without of controllability to aversive stressor, affect on development of gastric lesions, and also the measured brain noradrenaline, such as learned helplessness experiment. Okay, I move to my topics. Today, I'll talk the how can we prepare for the post-coronavirus era. Especially recently, I have done the suicide prevention survey with the Nippon Foundation. And second topics, act for the work and well-being, improvement, sustainable corporate value and human capital. Challenge from psychology of harmonization and sustainable development based on biopsychosocial approach to alter or improve the mental health situations. How is the coronavirus pandemic affecting Japan's society? What is happening in Japan about stress and death from suicide? What can individual, company, organization do in this time of crisis? The new research area of psychology of harmonization and sustainable development, the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic is every aspect of human life leads to concern for well-being of people. So, psychologists are motivated by our mission of contributing to co-creating, flourishing, and inclusive society that offer pandemic against. The awareness survey of 18 years old, led by the Nippon Foundation, was carried out at February this year on the subject of coronavirus and stress. 1,000 participants across Japan, men and women, aged 17 to 19, answered the awareness survey by internet after the government state of emergency. The question: do you sense that people around you are feeling an increased sense of confinement? The data showed the strong feeling of stress among young people. Almost 60% respondents replied people around them were feeling an increasing sense of confinement as a result of the coronavirus. 50% of respondents were feeling a sense of confinement themselves. I think the situation is the same in your countries. So, things experienced due to the coronavirus pandemic, with almost half of 15% of respondents saying they could not spend their leisure time as they wished, and those 90% reporting a feeling of stress, a continuous sense of uneasiness and irritation, and continued fatigue were particularly high among women who reported decreases in outdoors hobbies, time spent going out, time spent with friends, and time spent relaxing with family. Instead of increased time using smartphone, time spent on the hobbies, time playing video games in the house. Decreases that I mentioned, the outdoors activities. So this slide shows things experienced after coronavirus pandemic began. A continuous sense of fatigue, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, a feeling that I wish to die. Some young people attempted suicide. In Japan, the most recent data review, there are 21,000, over 2,000 deaths. Percent cause of death, 16.7%. Men, 14,000, 4,500, sorry. And women, 7,000 from suicide in 2020 after the beginning of the coronavirus infection. This is the latest change in number of deaths from suicide in Japan. So, during 10 days after crash the economic bubble, so continues to the 10 years, so 30,000 people died from suicide. But government tried to counter measures against the suicide, and rate that became the decreasing. But last years, after coronavirus pandemic, the increasing, especially female. So change in the environment around working due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Stress in the workplace is becoming heavier. So many workers difficult to find purpose, meaning of life But the phenomenon of death from overwork in Japan is frequent, and together with the suicide has many emotional effects on family, friends, and organizations. Amid the acceleration of remote working in response to coronavirus pandemic, the development of environments in which people can choose to work without any constraint in terms of time and place is problem. Uh, Progressing rapidly. 40% of teleworkers said, I feel anxiety because it is difficult to understand the feeling of the others through non-face-to-face communication with them, and I'm afraid that my superior and colleagues will think I'm slacking off. So stress experience at work, the adverse outcomes for health of individual employees lead to absenteeism, productivity loss, a variety of mental and physical disease. So, these changes making it difficult for workers to attend to job responsibilities. But the essence of the problem is the various issues we face today. Have not emerged abruptly due to the COVID-19 crisis. Generated higher levels of stress due to increases in the pace, volume, and the complexity of workload phases. So, rapid social modernization, such as digital transformation and or remote work in work styles derived from the pandemic. So, this is one of the recent research, cortisol awakening response with work-related stress in Japanese female workers. I think that I have no time to explain this slide. So, skip. What's happening in Japanese female workers? I mentioned before the change in lifestyle and values. Also the change in female roles. More opportunity for women as workforce in Japan. Higher divorce rate, lower marriage rate, lower birth rate, changing the societies. So these reasons cause the heavier burdens of household parenting for women due to responsibility in multiple roles such as work, parenting, and household. I think that you know the cortisol is one of the famous represented stress hormones. This is the typical stress response axis from hypothalamus until the pituitary to adrenal cortex. From this organ secreted the cortisol to the blood vessels. this stress hormone is also associated with the increased risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome. I measured cortisol awakening response. Cortisol level in morning is high. The levels became decreased, become lower from morning to the evening. But especially morning time, just after awakening, cortisol transitorily increases within 30 minutes or after awakening the 30 minutes. So we measure this cortisol at this time. So we call cortisol awakening response. The cortisol awakening response is positively associated with daily life stress and work stress. So subject 100 women of the university clerks. I distribute the subject happiness scales and also the UCLA loneliness scale. So subjects are divided according to the score of these scales, and saliva samples are collected to the morning time and evening. So cortisol is measured by an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. This is demographics. From 100 participants, I choose high happiness subject, number of the subject 20, and low happiness group 20s. So subject happiness scores differed from significantly these groups, and also the SSDs measured by depression. So low happiness groups is higher than the high happiness groups. Also, I measured the cortisol on work days and weekend, holiday, Saturday and or Saturday and Sunday. Can you show the vertical lines, the level of cortisol? Horizontal axis is the time, and red line depicted by low happiness groups, blue lines high happiness groups. Work days significantly increases cortisol awakening responses, high happiness groups. But weekend, this group is a very lower level of cortisol. But low happiness groups, there is no difference between work days and weekend. This data implicated low happiness groups difficult to recover from work stress. Also, the high happiness groups, the lower effort, higher reward, commitment is lower, and depression level lowered as compared to the low happiness groups. So low happiness groups answer the work stress, perceived work stress, as well as objective cortisol levels. So well-being, such as happiness, is related to lower level of work stress and depression, and cortisol awakening response is greater on the workday than on weekend. Differences in cortisol awakening response between the working day, weekday, and weekend holiday are more expressed in people with the high well-being, such as happiness. On the other hand, a persistent core is related to people with the lack of happiness on workday and weekend. The present findings are discussed as important allostatis, the new concept of the stress phenomena, and allostatic load issues, where psychosocial factors plays a key. These research the impressing. So you can see the book with the cross-cultural perspective of well-being and sustainability organizations, published by Springer. The editor, the Professor Di Fabio, is a famous professor from Firenze. Also, the same result from in terms of the loneliness. Lonely people showed higher than level of cortisol as compared to low loneliness groups. Weekend, there was no difference with high loneliness groups. So these groups shows always higher cortisol levels, even though weekend. But low happiness groups only shows the work days. Weekdays, very relaxing. Evidence from the physiological response. So loneliness that represents limited social network was associated with higher work-related stress, greater negative affect, and less positive affect. Heightened cortisol awakening response on weekends was associated with high loneliness. There are significant differences in the core in low loneliness group between workday and weekend, but not in high loneliness. So loneliness might lead to a chronic state of stress that is not resolved even on weekend, because lonely people are particularly lonely on the weekends, and therefore a hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system that is always activated. Okay, I move to the questionnaire studies, is a panel studies with the Japan foundations. Can you imagine equivalent number of people with suicide? 2 years ago, Tokyo Marathon, almost 40 people joined. Also Kobe Marathon, 20,000 people joined. These of half, it unfortunately dies from suicide. This picture shows the association with the life satisfaction and gross domestic production. The horizontal axis shows GDP, higher GDP, and vertical axis shows the life satisfaction. Japan's higher GDP, but lower life satisfaction. But your country's much more higher than the life satisfaction as compared to the Japanese peoples. What's happening in Japan? Things affecting well-being. In Japan, many workers experience mental health issues such as anxiety and mood disorders, and many of them leave their organizations because of mental health problems. There is increasing evidence today's workers' environment result in higher risk of mental health disorder such as depression. Prevalence of depression is increasing since 1996. There are over 1 million patients of male-female in 2020s. Another data have confirmed Japanese unhappiness and does not live with enough satisfactions. Indonesia, your country's emerging countries belongs, but Japan's the advanced country, but life satisfaction is lower than your countries. So Japanese unhappy, satisfied with our lives, unsatisfied. So in the current Japanese economy and social security, well-being is perceived as not high enough. High suicide rate, low birth rate, and death caused by suicide are serious issues. Currently, Japanese government institutions such as labor and welfare urge firms to take responsibility for health of the nations. Many previous studies demonstrated that various psychosocial factors are associated with suicide risks. According to the WHO, suicide mortality rate is Japan's second highest. But younger generation is the top rank of the G7 countries. One is 4 people in Japan seriously considers suicide. As mentioned before, in Japan, 20,000 people took their own life in 2018. The Nippon Foundation launched the studies prevention project after the passage in revision to the Basic Act on suicide countermeasures. This project started after passage in 2016. So, Nippon Foundation Suicide Prevention Project called the principal investigators, Professor Takahashi. I am one of the group members. So this study is to report the result of its second large-scale suicide awareness survey, which is the one-year follow-up survey to investigate facts of suicide ideation attempt, to understand suicide ideation attempt, to identify preventative factors, to explore effective and nationwide countermeasures using the same participants of the first surveys. I follow up the 1 year later. So, men and women aged 20 and over, representing all 47 of Japan's prefectures in terms of demographic variables such as gender, age, income, and marital status. About 21 participants responses. It's the 52.3 answer rate from original registered 40,000 members. Responses were nearly half of them. The online internet survey 2017 have consisted of the 53 questions to assess the 7 areas. And panel data analysis, logistic analysis, multiple groups, structure, equation modeling. I applied to analyze the data. These are questions: demographic data, mental health factors, life stressors, life conditions, such as housing, education, employment, and important question items: suicide, ideation, attempt, and protective factors. This is a little bit complicated measure result. First surveys 20,000 participants answered suicide attempt 66%, 12,000 participants. And 1 year later, these 60% participants how to change. Still 40% continue to or again the attempt to the suicide, especially within 1 year event of suicide attempt, again 55%. 90% of respondents answered the no suicide attempts. Still continue to 90% the no attempts 1 year later. So more than half of the respondents who had attempted suicide at the time of previous survey have made subsequent attempts. So key findings: half of respondents have attempted suicide again. The risk suicidal thought and attempted suicide is high among young people aged 15 to 39. This shows the depicted by the orange lines. Especially younger generations increasing the rate of the suicide in Japan. Also, the cause of the suicide ideation. Top 3 issues. Top is a family problem, health problem, and economic life. So 3 major combination of the cause. So this data showed had the highest score to participants who had suicide identification attempt in 2017. Also, the chronic illness or disease continues to be a major reason for having suicide thought. Chronic mental disease, chronic physical disease. Health problem is one of the major suicide attempts. So suicide thoughts and attempted suicide can lead to an increases in negative life events. As well, negative life events lead to suicide ideation attempts. So that's a circle relation. Poverty, suicide ideation, bullying at the school, suicide attempt, also the exacerbated bullying or abuse. So protective facts: getting enough sleep is
Getting enough
important.
sleep is important for curtailing suicidal thoughts and attempted suicide.
Yeah. So this the almost 6, 7, 8 hours. The protective suicide. The good sleep or quality of sleeping is important. Another protective fact: improvement close family relationships. Resolution of these problems is the main reason for persons no longer having suicidal thoughts. And the other findings: the moderation of relationship with community members. At the degree to which someone wants to continue to living where they currently live increases, suicide thought decreases. So important factors is the degree of attachment to the place of residence. So as compared to the suicide attempt, suicidal ideation, the same, especially suicidal ideations is important. So these findings emphasize that people tend to think of suicide as individual problems. Residence, marital status, employment. But we need to understand it as a social problem. Support for living is the essence of suicide prevention. So this one-year follow-up studies identified changes that have occurred since the time of first survey to determine the factors that lead to suicide thoughts and attempt suicide. Consistent with the previous survey carried out by Cabinet Office, and reaffirm the importance of strengthening early countermeasures. Risk factors in young adults are higher than those of older adults in Japan. These findings emphasize that people tend to think of suicide as individual problem, but we need to understand it as a social problem. Support for living is the essence of suicide prevention. Don't panic, be present, offer hope is what suicide people want. Okay. What to do if you have an overwhelming urge to kill yourself? Stop, drop, roll, and talk principle. Tell, ask, listen, keep safe. Okay, so I think the move to last topics. The coordinates of improvement of sustainable corporate values and human capital, especially for graduate students of the industrial and organization students. The psychology of harmonization and sustainable development is applied to work and well-being toward post-pandemic growth. We not building back better from the COVID-19 crisis, but building forward better. So, considering harmonization in geographical and temporal perspective, including process from the past to the present and future, focusing process at the individual, group, community, social nations levels, advocated by the United Nations is the Sustainable Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, 70 goals. Things that. This is the slide is borrowed by the Professor Anna Maria from Firenze. She talks the science of the sustainable development, the new frontiers. I think that you can see her articles. Yeah, here's pictures, Firenze University. He's also one of my friends, as well as the youth. This is a call for papers, sustainability journals. I invited as a guest editors with Anna Maria's and me. So I think that's best. So we need opening the black box of psychological process in the science of sustainable development. Internal psychological process within the individual, decisional and behavioral process. They have to be studied and understood better within individual, between human being, natural world. So innovative psychological research perspectives encompassed in the harmonization and sustainable development in terms of improvement of sustainable corporate value and human capital in the industry and organization domain, psychology domains. Okay. It's a new concept, the human capitals. Before we mentioned the human resource, but this conception is changing after coronavirus pandemic infection, globalization, digitalization, and in Japan, the declining birth rate and the aging population. We call the era longevity of 100 years. Recently, the Anna Maria is developed the new psychological scale to measure the human capital sustainability leaderships. So you can show the her articles. Okay, so this is the schema of the improvement of sustainable corporate values and human capital. The Japanese government proposed the 3 perspectives and 5-factor models. Both companies and individuals need to flexibility, respond to change, and enhance their resilience to shock and reformation ability to respond to change is closely linked to productivity and competitiveness. This is an issue important of which had been reaffirmed and the response to the COVID-19 infections. The 3P 5-factor models, 3 perspectives and 5-factor models describes characteristic people strategy in industrial and organizational psychology domains. I discussed improvement of sustainable corporate values and human capital on the basis of the recognition that values are variable assets. People strategy differ depending on the industries and companies. There are following 3 perspectives for such strategies. Due to the coronavirus infection, the whole of society is currently exploring way to adapt to the new normal, and there is a high probability that company that swiftly respond to the changing, and companies that hesitated about taking a step towards change will be differentiated in the labor market and the capital markets. The trends of change in the environment surrounding a company and individual, such as rapid change in industrial structure due to the industrial revolution and globalization, a declining birth rate and aging populations, arrival of the era of longevity, where the 100 year of career development. So we prioritize the issues related to the personal strategies, the diversification of talent and values, improving to employee engagement, supporting autonomous career development, and providing opportunity for growth. Unfortunately, in Japan, the status of individuals run outside their companies and educated themselves. Very half of workers do not run outside their companies, but your country is almost over 90% is run outside the companies.
Professor Akira,
Yeah.
yeah, I apologize for interrupting. You have 10 minutes left for
Okay.
the presentation. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So the employee engagement, as compared to the international comparison, the employees engagement in Japan is the very low percentage. Employee engagement is very low as compared to the other countries. Almost is not engaged. So this figure shows the correlations between the engagement scores and operating income ratios. So important is engagement scores increasing, or at the same time the income ratio for the increasing. So direct linkage between management issues and issues related to people strategies. Now the societies become the digitalizations. So we need the retraining and the reallocating talents as a personal strategies. But companies with average or higher diversity scores that were measured in 6 areas: gender, age, country of origins. So diversity is important, but in Japan, still diversity percentage of the lower in companies. So human capital value creation is recently recognized as an investment in personal visualization of its effects. Japanese companies very low investment in education, training as compared to the United States, United Kingdom. So we should do new actions, people strategies. Purpose is to improve sustainable cooperative values formulated with cooperative strategy reflecting not personal affairs is to operate it and improve personal systems, not management strategy. Japan's the personal affairs department in Japan recognizes as value drivers as compared to the global companies. So other strategy is clarifying the reasons, the tool in French, purpose of the companies, focus on the fostering and circulating diverse talents and build and operating flexible personal systems, including proportion of job-based employment. So another data shows the Japanese companies the very low important issues is a linkage to the people strategy and the corporate strategy. So I suggest the direction of the reformations, executive team, board of directors. The executive team taken initiative to ensure the linkage with the cooperative strategies, and the board of directors performs monitoring. So this is a typical Japanese community of empowerment progress. The same employment, the same route, but now from now the need the diverse and many route of the careers needed diverse open types come and out. So this we call the vector directions. So person strategy features scenarios for value creation. Activity provide information to investigate investors and employees and hold dialogues with them. I think that I skipped the status. So, okay. Okay, fine. Conclusions. Clarification of corporate philosophy, reason to tool and corporate strategies. Formulation and implementation of the people strategy in coordination with the corporate strategies, asserting the as-is state and qualifying an as is to be gap. active communication with the employee and investors. So we have the prepared to the solve the for many problems. For example, so I developed the new assessment checks. We call the comprehensive health check for workers questionnaires, capable assessing the health status of workers, especially the susceptibility to stress experience in daily life. So this paper appeared in a book of the positive psychology for healthy organizations. And also I committed with the health promotion of the companies, in which developed the smartphone app to promote the health status. Health promotion programs. That's unfortunately the only Japanese versions. I think the times if you want to see the home page that the United Health Companies, you can see it. Okay, but we have a still. This is the last slide. We have still remained unsolved. Invent effective self-care healthcare service corresponding to the current people's values and lifestyle. Help them manage their mental health continuously. Improvement of the questionnaires of personal strengths. Development of training program of personal strengths. We need progress with the. Thank you for attention. This is the. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Akira, for the very insightful topic. To sum up, as we've been nearly 2 years living in a pandemic, we're fully aware that this pandemic influences every aspect of our lives, which lead to stress. The cortisol level or stress hormone turns out indeed higher on the weekdays. That's interesting. And it's apparently related to loneliness due to limited social networks, which in turn could lead to suicide, especially in the younger generation. And in relation with improvement of sustainable corporate value and human capital, it is especially important for organizations to increase employees' engagement in the workplaces nowadays by focusing more on the value creation, which really reflects the corporate strategy, clarifying the purpose of the company, being initiative for the boards of directors to monitor the linkage with the corporate strategy, and also actively providing information to investors. Thank you, Professor Akira. So it is now a Q&A session. I have seen a questions on the chat box. So there is a question from Mrs. Diana Waturangi. Mrs. Diana, would you please ask directly to Professor Akira?
Yes. I think that the question.
Mrs. Diana? Or let me read the question for you. The
Yeah.
question is, yeah. Thank you for great sharing, Professor Akira. And the question is, how is your comment, your opinion about the relation of healthy gut microbiota in regulating cortisol level for the purpose of well-being?
As the cortisol is one of the anti-stress hormone, especially the acute state. But chronically phase, the cortisol decrease the resistance of the immunological function. So that cortisol is regulated the microbiome. So we need a higher resistance of virus. So that's very related with the cortisol levels. So cortisol is also associated with the perceived stress. So and lead to well-being levels. So that the cortisol is a key hormone of virus infections, or as well as sustainable well-being. Is this understand my comments?
Yeah, Mrs. Diana, does that answer your question? Oh, on the chat box. Yes, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next question. Mrs. Aidar Mumtazia for SPC Indonesia, you're raising your hand. Would you are you going to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Elsa.
Yeah.
Konnichiwa, Professor.
Oh, yes, Japanese there.
はじめまして、アイダルと申します。
Yeah.
Konnichiwa. It is a very interesting topics, and then what makes it interesting is because it focuses on research, and then also come up with countermeasure on how to solve the problem. And also I feel sad, very sad to understand that they are increasing suicidal rate in Japan due to pandemic situation. But the good thing is Professor Akira-san and your colleague has come up with the countermeasure on how to prevent it for happening. So I have two questions, Professor Akira-san, if I may. いいですか?2つしも。
Welcome.
ありがとうございます。It's about burnout. So lately, I receive complaints from people who feel burned out due to remote working or working from home. And then it seems that it is similar what you have just shared to us. It is due to overwork, increasing pace, as well as increasing complexity in the work. So I understand that you suggesting the problem solving on organization side is to prepare a new style of leadership, such as mindfulness and other 3 types of leadership. And as well, organization need to be more increasing their corporate value practice, like listen to people more and those kind of things. But my question is more on a practical example on how to prevent organization or company to increase their pace too much or increase the complexity too much. And then the second question is, because burnout is not a depressed situation yet, but it is quite a serious, high-level stressful situation on employees. And then when they feel burnt out, what is your suggestion to overcome it? So thank you.
Thank you for a question, Daida. So
はい。
also that you speak the Japanese.
少しだけです。
あ、
小さい時、日本に住んでました。あれは40の前のことです。
Okay, I'll talk later about
はいはいはい。
So, your question is very recently the Japanese companies host by the Sustainable Development Goals. So, new trend to get the world invest. So that companies have to change the new corporate values. But corona pandemic is worse the situation of the employees. So we are still try to find the good countermeasures against, but only government try to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So we need to keep the activity of the economies and also the controlling the coronavirus. So that we need the time. So, but Japanese government as companies try to co-creation of the company's values and talent, person, resource as a and the second question is a very severe situation with the mental health due to coronavirus, especially the young generations and the female, because female, the many Japanese younger female lost the jobs, so, and lead to the difficult to keep the living cost. So anyway, we have to prevent coronavirus infection spreading. So I think that we have to wait the third shot of the vaccine, and so the new taking medication to prevent the coronavirus. But the government, also the companies together work. I think that we try to find new ways. That's the I need a little bit times the finish of the corona pandemics. So thank you for your wonderful questions. I need to think about later much more, and so send by emails.
はい、ありがとうございます。あれは十分です。ありがとうございます。
All right. Moving on, there is another question from Mrs. Diana Harding. Bu Diana, she is my lecturer.
Yeah.
Thank you
very much, moderator. Good afternoon, Prof. Akira. We are very happy to have you here giving wonderful presentation. In regards to your presentation, I have a question that I would like to ask. As of my knowledge, right now in Japan, there is the issue of black company phenomenon with implication of worker suicide and lower well-being due to the job pressure and overwork, as well as the work-life balances. With Indonesia now also trying to improve their economy, what do you think that needs to be done to avoid such phenomenon and aiming for SDGs? Such insight will be useful for our future research here, in particular to industrial psychology. Kyokite kurete hontoni arigato gozaimashita.
Professor, sorry, you are still muted. Your microphone. It's still off, your microphone, sir. Yeah, it's off again. Yeah, right. Okay.
Thank you for questions. I'm very happy to discuss these issues. Your country becomes the increasing the good economy situation as compared to our countries. So I think this is one reason, the cultural differences, because your country is much more optimistic and as compared to Japanese. So we are pessimistic. So the same situations we think about as worse as compared to your countries. That's one reason. But Japanese companies think about the equivalent economic advancement and work engagement for employees. So we are now keep with the balance the economic activities and employees happy well-being. So this is the coronavirus is tells us our long past. So I think from now the Japanese societies change the new directions, much more focus on the optimistic side, similar to your countries. So is enough to my answers for your questions.
Thank you very much for your answer. Sugi no sensei no hapyo wo omatase shimasu.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the question.
So many people.
All right, moving forward, there's another question from Mrs. Yangki Harti Jasti.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Konnichiwa, Akira Sensei. Okay, so I have a question because you mentioned about suicide urge from the Japanese even in after pandemic. But before pandemic, we know that the thoughts are also high, right? And even the doing they're really doing it. Is there any what is that? What are really the real problem of this suicidal thoughts, you know? And then is there any comparative study with the Korean workers? Because I've been in Japan and Korea, and I saw even Korean workers are more rush than the Japanese when they walk. Yeah. So is there any comparison? Maybe I can also, you know, read about it. And is there any strategy also from the HR department, since this is really a very a very important issues, and it's always increasing every year. So is there any strategies from the HR department to decrease the suicidal thoughts? Thank you, Akira Sensei.
Okay. Thank you for good questions. Yeah, I think that even though the Far East countries such as Japan and Korea, there's a little bit culture differences. In Japan, the culture is much more receive the responsibilities their own as compared to the Koreans. So that's one reason the high level of the suicide rate. Especially recently, we concerned with the young generation. So, and government try to develop the applications using the smartphone and the iPhone. So younger people is easy to access to the helpline. So that's one counter measurement. And also the psychoeducation for from primary school and the junior high school. We need much more time to educate the young generations, and as well as changing the cultural perspectives. Okay. Thank you for nice comments.
So is there any comparative study or whatever?
I'm so sorry, I have not yet cannot, but I think that use if have a role to the moderators between Korea and Japan. He crossed the bridge, the Korea and Japan. I think the use. So I have no research resource. So
Okay.
I ask your university.
Okay, thank you, Akira Sensei. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Terima kasih banyak.
Sama-sama.
Sama-sama.
Okay, thank you. And there would be two last questions. The first one is from Mrs. Butia. Yeah, Mrs. Hendriati Butia.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Ya, terima kasih. Prof. Akira, good to see you. Long time no see.
I remember your
Hi. Okay. Very interesting, Prof. Akira, about the research you have, and I'm interested about health education program. Worker with high stress level, they can learn how to apply stress mindset theory in daily life. From the perspective of psychological process, self-efficacy is the important thing. Is it true, Prof. Akira?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And also the important motivations. There's self-efficacy.
Okay. I want to know how we want to know about how to improve self-efficacy. It is not easy. How the strategy to improve self-efficacy, Prof. Akira, for the high level of stress from workers?
Yes, so it's a very difficult things. But as you know, the Bandura proposed the 5 strategies to increase the self-efficacy, modeling, but and also the mimic or the other good persons. But so the attainment is the I can do it. So the small steps, step by steps. So and so that need the education to psychoeducation for junior high school and high school as well as the primary school students. So that we now develop the program for to prevent it or increasing the self-efficacy in order to prevent the lowered self-efficacy. So I think that if you suggest to me that your countries how to rise the self-efficacy for your students. Thank you for questions.
Thank you, Prof. Akira.
Okay, thank you. And the last question would be from Mrs. Alpana. Yes, please.
Alpana. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm in my college, in my office. And I'm first of all, my apologies for joining a little late because we had academic council meeting. But I was definitely there for your excellent presentation. It was excellent and comprehensive.
Yeah.
And also, I'm very much curious if I get the copy of your research paper, which you published with Anna Maria on cross-cultural perspective and sustainability, because that will help us to understand and know more about, because I feel that if we can also collaborate, like Professor Hughes, me, and we, 3 of us can collaborate and work on cross-cultural perspectives on sustainability with respect to our own country, that can also be a very good research, I would say. Now, second thing that I wanted to ask you is, when we talk about the suicide rate is very high and employee engagement, it is very low. What must be the reason, according to you, for lower employment engagement in your country? Because when we compare our country with your country, we say that in India, the rate of employee engagement is very low among Indians. So what must be the reason? Because if we compare that with Western countries, that shows that, yes, it is also low.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for proposal. I'm very interested in joint studies in India, Indonesia, and Japan. So, but second question is very difficult to answer quickly. So maybe later, after thinking about much more deeply it's the one reason is cross-cultural difference is important. The Japanese people has a gene, the serotonin transportation is very specific as compared to your countries and Western peoples. The one reason is biological basis, and also the social factors, many complex factors related to such a phenomenon. Thank you for questions.
Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all of the questions. It is such an interesting and fruitful discussion. And on behalf of Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, Universitas Padjadjaran, I would like to invite Mr. Frederick to give the certificate and souvenir as an appreciation for Professor Akira. Mr. Frederick from JK, yeah.
Here, can you show the certificate and the... Dear Professor Akira, thank you for a very important and fruitful presentation. I highlighted the last point from Professor Apana that we hope that we could have a collaboration between the three countries in the future. And this is the certificate that we provide me. It's too bad that you couldn't visit us here to give this lecture offline. But I hope that probably next year we can meet here in Indonesia, especially in Jatinangor. So this is the certificate signed by the Pak Yus and also the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology. And the second one is a token of appreciation in form of, can you go to the next picture? I think we have a picture of the, there is, how to call it? There's, how to call it in Indonesia? Yeah, Mas?
Kujang.
Kujang. Yeah, kujang. Yeah, no, I mean, I have to explain it in English. I know that the name is kujang. I mean, like, there is something that we should be able to give you if you are here. But then later on, if you visit us, or if probably Pak Yus will go there to visit you in Japan, we will give it to you formally. So hopefully that in the hopefully that you and also family and friends there in good health and also for sure in good well-being. Thank you from us again.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. So wonderful. So I'm looking forward to visit your university to get such a very precious.
Thank you, Mr. Akira.
Yeah, before we continue, let's take a picture first, Mr. Frederick, with the Professor Akira, with the souvenir and the certification. Yeah. On my lead, operator, would you please help? Yeah. On my lead, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and the souvenir, yeah. On my lead, 3, 2, 1. All right. All right. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid our time is up. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today's agenda. I hope the presentation widen your knowledge and give you some insights. This will be all from me. I will invite the Master of Ceremony to be back to the screen again. Back to you, Miss Aida.
Thank you very much, Professor Akira, for your comprehensive presentation. Arigatou gozaimasu. And thank you to Ms. Elsa for your excellent job on moderating today's panel, as well as the audience who asked and participated. Now we would like to give a certificate for our moderator, Ms. Elsa, that will be given by Head of Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, Bapak Yus Nugraha. So Bapak Yus, please, I invite you to the stage.
Thank you. This is our saving for Ms. Elsa, this very beautiful for this session. Thank you, Ms. Elsa.
Okay, now we will take a picture of both of you. So please give your best smile. I will take the lead in 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more time. I'll take the lead in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay. Now I would like to invite all the participants to take group photos again. So please, everyone who can turn on your cameras, we'll take a group photos. Yeah, okay. I will take the 2 photos. Okay, for the first one, I will take the lead. Please give your best smile. Okay, I'll start the countdown in 3, 2, 1. Okay, now you can use the reaction. Any reaction is okay. I will use the thumbs up. Use the thumbs up, and anyone maybe can use another reaction. Okay. I'll start the countdown in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, then I would like to remind you again to fill out our attendance form in the chat box so you can get a certificate sent to your email. Don't forget to fill out your attendance form in the chat box.
Kang Yos masih hancur suaranya.
I think there's a problem with your audio, Kang Yus.
Hancur, euy. Kumaha dah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, everyone, that finished the visiting lecturer while being at work. On behalf of the team, I'd like to thank the amazing speaker once again, and also our moderators, our lecturer, and all participants for joining us today via Zoom or YouTube. It has been our pleasure to host this event, and I wish you all a pleasant day. Hope you are always in a good health, and hope to see you again on many more webinars to come. I'm Aida Rahmania signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Arigato. Nuhun.
Nuhun.
Signing off. Kang Yus nggak usah ngomong, Kang Yus. Budek kita.